Good evening, Madam Mayor and members of the council. As the mayor said, our first item tonight is our 2021 state legislative policy. It's been our custom the last several of years to develop some staff recommendations of what would be fitting for that legislative policy, to present that to the council in a study session, make sure you think we are on the right track, and then bring a resolution to the council formally adopting that, which we're tentatively planning to do at the December 7th City Council meeting. So this evening, our legislative liaison, Mr. John Mayfield, is here to give you a review of that proposed policy. Mr. Mayfield.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager, Madam Mayor, members of the council. I'm John Mayfield, Constituent Services and Legislative Affairs Officer for the City of Independence. Good evening. As the City Manager said, I'm here to present the 2021 proposed state legislative policy. We have worked with staff, the City Manager's office, and our two lobbying teams to put this proposal together. And as the City Manager mentioned, it's our intention to have the final version on the council agenda on December 7th for your final consideration. The 101st General Assembly will convene on Wednesday, January 6, 2021. It'll be here before you know it, trust me. Legislators will begin the process of pre-filing bills beginning December the 1st, and you'll be receiving detailed emails from both of our lobbying teams about these bills as they're pre-filed throughout the month of December, and you'll also receive a regular update from our lobbying teams on the legislative activity beginning in January through the end of the legislative session in May. We have 4 top legislative priorities that we have identified for the city in 2021, so I will go through them and kind of talk just briefly about a little bit about each one of them. If you have questions, if you want to interrupt me while I'm going on, that's fine. If you want to wait till the end, totally up to you. But I will dive right in. The first one, in the interest of public safety, the city supports legislation to reinstate the authority of municipal governments to suspend in-state driver's licenses for failure to appear or failure to pay fines for traffic violations. As some of you know that have been on the council for a while, the state passed municipal court reform in 2015 and 2016, which really hampered our ability to get people to comply and come in and plead their case in front of the municipal court or pay their fine or set up a payment plan. We estimate that 2/3 of our traffic violators do not appear in municipal court, and they get a bench warrant. And the municipal court reform basically said, well, you can't confine someone for failing to pay their traffic violations. And we have 99 miles of highway that our police department patrols in the City of Independence. That's a lot of highway to patrol. And when people know that there aren't any consequences for their actions, you know, we are really left in a bad situation. I mean, we have people that, you know, continually to get tickets. They don't take care of them. The state requires us to give them a payment plan. This is really in the interest of public safety. If there's not consequences, people continue to do, you know, bad things over and over again. And this has been a top priority for the city for a number of years. Last year, we were actually able to get it in a bill that made it to the governor's desk. Unfortunately, the governor vetoed it. There were other things in the bill the governor did not like, so he vetoed it. This year being the session of COVID-19, not a lot of bills were passed, but we're hopeful for better prospects in 2021. Secondly, the city opposes any reduction in the cable franchise fee. In the 1980s, cable companies and cities negotiated a deal where basically the cable companies were allowed to put their structures in the city rights of way and did not have to get easements, and in exchange for that, they would pay a cable franchise fee. And City of Independence receives a 5% cable franchise fee. Each percentage is about roughly $270,000. So we estimate our cable franchise fee brings in about $1.3 to $1.5 million annually, and that's used in the general fund, and it funds things, police, fire, snow removal, street improvements, and so forth. And this would be a big hit to our general fund if we lost this. And I can tell you, up until the last hour of the session last May, we were fighting against the cable franchise fee reduction. And it is something we will have to fight again in 2021. The third item, the city supports Wayfair legislation, which will allow the City of Independence to collect the voter-approved use tax on sales from vendors that do not have a nexus or physical location in Missouri. In June 2018, the U.S. Supreme Court made a decision in Wayfair versus South Dakota that kind of overturned a 1992 Supreme Court decision, Quill versus North Dakota, In 1992, the court said, well, you have to have a physical location in the state, the business does, to actually be able to collect the sales tax. And then in 2018, as the internet came along and Amazon and other companies came along and online sales became a much bigger deal in our society, the Supreme Court said, no, they don't necessarily have to have what they call a nexus or physical location in your state to collect a use tax. Now, we have a use tax currently that we're able to collect on sales from folks who already have a location here in Independence, but this would allow us to collect a sales tax on a sale from a vendor, maybe, for example, Washington State. Say there's a bat company in Washington State, and they don't have a warehouse or a building or any tie to Missouri, but they sell me a commemorative baseball bat for me to give to my nephew for Christmas. I don't pay sales tax on or use tax on that. Even though the sale's occurring here, whoever delivers that to me is using our roads and our police and fire protection, but they don't have to pay. And what that does is it hurts our local businesses. I have had local businesses tell me over the last several years, they've actually had folks come into their stores, get out their cell phone, take a picture of something, Google it, and find it online and buy it for a few cents cheaper because it was online and they have to pay a sales tax or use tax. So our brick and mortar stores, I'm sure, would be very supportive of us doing this as well. And finally, the last thing, this is a little more wordy than I probably should have written it, so I apologize for that. The city supports local control of rights of way and public assets. Local jurisdictions need authority to set reasonable and predictable application processes and fees for the deployment of wireless facilities, including small cell pole attachments. You might remember Tom Robbins from Strategic Capital came and talked at the end of August about a bill that was passed in 2018. And basically what I'm saying here is, at a bare minimum, we want to be able to defend the things we got in that bill, including the second highest cell pole attachment fees in the nation. Independence Power and Light poles, there is no cap on fees with them, and that we were able to retain some zoning over wireless facilities in single-family neighborhoods and historic districts. At a bare minimum, we want to defend that. As Mr. Robbins said, AT&T had 15 lobbyists working on their behalf. We have a short-term truce with the telecoms, but that's a short-term truce, and we're looking at the bare minimum to maintain what we have. And if there's opportunities to get an even better deal, we would be eager for that. Quite honestly, we probably have the best deal we're going to get, and if a peace treaty, if you will, were offered, I think we would have to consider that strongly. So at the bare minimum, we want to defend what we have, and if there's opportunities to get a better deal down the road, then we would actually like to take advantage of that. So those, in a nutshell, are the 4 state legislative priorities that we've put together for 2021. Not to say that there aren't other situations that may come about and give us opportunities to get legislation passed that's beneficial for the city and for our citizens, but these are the 4 main ones that we've identified, and I think that's all that I have. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer your questions the best I can.
Okay, are there any questions from the council?
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
Mr. Mayfield, just so I'm clear, items 1, 2, and 3 will be John Barget and Company's job, and item number 4 is Strategic Capital's job. Is that correct?
No, actually, numbers 1 and 3 will be John Barget and Associates. Numbers 2 and 4 will be Strategic Capital. The reason why Strategic Capital is doing number 2 for us is these bills tend to end up in front of the utilities committees in the House and the Senate. They handle and track a lot of utility legislation for us and have built relationships with the chairs of the House and Senate utilities committees. And that is a good fit for them. They've been working on that with us and dealing with the cable companies and their lobbyists for several years. So that's kind of why they have been handling that.
And so Barget and Company and Tilley and Company know their jobs under 1, 2, 3, and 4.
We shared this document with them, I believe, on October the 15th. And once the council adopts this officially, it will again be shared with them as well as our local state delegation.
Okay, I just want to be clear that everybody knows what we're getting for our $240,000. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Any other questions for John?
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
John, under the Wayfair legislation, from what it reads here, that is something that could be simply, I say simple, that just needs to be passed by the General Assembly. That doesn't have to be moved forward to a statewide vote.
My understanding is if the legislature passes, and it depends on what they decide, but what my understanding is, as I stand here tonight, that if they were to pass legislation saying that you could do that, we've already passed a use tax by our voters, so that would, my understanding is it would go into effect for us. I don't believe it would be a statewide vote. Thank you very much. If there's no more questions. Thank you. Thank you.
Tax in your community in order to be. I mean, we've already passed the local.
All right, we're having a little communication problem there. Let's move on to number 2. Mr. City Manager.
Yes, sir. The next presentation we have is an update on the Land Clearance Redevelopment Authority. This is an initiative our local Independence Chamber of Commerce has been taking a look at over the last several. Going to be a couple of speakers tonight to have a dialogue with the council about this, but first and foremost, we'd like to welcome Mr. Tom Lesnick, President of the Independence Chamber of Commerce.
Thank you, Mr. Walker, and good evening, Mayor Weir and members of the, as Zach said, I'm Tom Lesnick. You should have had a little history on this as it was passed by voters back in 1957. It was used in a number of different ways over several years, but kind of became dormant in the 1970s. And we think there's an opportunity there to maybe help with redevelopment here in Independence going. And they established a committee we call Quality Housing and Safe Neighborhoods. The committee has been meeting for the last year talking about different things we can do as an organization and as a community to kind of encourage housing within our community. Obviously, there's a number of tools in the toolbox that are out there. LCRA, as it's often referred to, is one of those many tools. And we feel like it's something that has potential for redevelopment. As you look across Independence, especially the older parts, there's areas where we see homes that are unoccupied, that are abandoned, lots that are too small for development, but possibly could be combined with other sites to encourage new development. As many of you know, especially in Northwest Independence, I don't think there's been very many new houses since the 1950s built. And certainly Councilman Perkins is aware of that, and we think there's a lot of opportunity. We've come a long ways with housing, I think, in the last few years, and I think there's even greater opportunities moving forward. So tonight I want to give you a quick introduction. We have several members of the committee here. The committee is made up of a variety of chamber members in the real estate profession, in professional business and other services. It's very diverse. But tonight we're going to give you a little background on LCRA, kind of how we see it moving forward. I'm going to introduce our first speaker, which is Jim Allen. Jim is a member of the committee. He'll be followed up by Steve Maurer. Steve Maurer is an attorney here in the region, very familiar with our LCRAs, how they work, how they're governed, and some of the successes he's seen around the area and the communities he's worked with. So I'll introduce Jim Allen.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you, Tom, very much. I get the honor of kind of giving you guys a little bit of background about our committee, right? So first, I'll start off and let you know, at 40, soon to be 46 years old, I'm a lifelong member or lifelong resident of Independence. Grew up about a block and a half off Truman and River. Went to Bryan Elementary, went to now what was Palmer and Chrisman. Been here my whole life. I've got family members that own businesses in this area. When it was time for me to open my first business, almost 4 years ago now, there was only one place I was going to open it, and that was in Independence. So that's the short story of me. The committee was formed, like Tom mentioned, to take a look at particularly the west side, but really, frankly, all parts of Independence, so that we could address areas that are underserved, that have got what the committee has started to call missing teeth, those areas that have got blight, that have got properties that have got out-of-state owners, that have got landlords that have let these properties go defunct, that we have a hard time chasing, that the neighbors complain about, yet we don't have any real right to any of this property. We're taking a look at some of these neighborhoods and trying to find an opportunity so that we can help developers come in and enhance these neighborhoods. A couple of the initiatives of our committee that we talk about is the fact that, one, we want to try to target the mayor and the city's target of raising our household income. So we've got a lot of areas, particularly again on the west side of the city, that give an opportunity for, let's say, starter homes. Homes that are really wonderful, nice area for a younger family with children to move in close to a school that they attend, close to a church that they attend, close to family members. Yet as that family develops, as that family grows, as they grow their personal average income, the opportunities for them to stay in some of those areas isn't as great. We want to keep those families that love independence like I do and grew up here, that want to start businesses here, that want to go to work here, that want to shop here, keep them in our neighborhoods. Let's give them a better opportunity and better places, quote unquote better, but as they continue to strive, if there's a home, right now we've got record mortgage rates. I don't think that's a secret to anybody. People are aspiring to buy a little bit more home, a little bit better home. Let's keep them here. The LCRA is one opportunity that we have found that can help do that. The fact of the matter is, we can help raise that average median income. We can help improve our school taxes. Dr. Hurl, I'm sure, would be impressed with the idea that there's going to be no taxpayer money to support this. But you can increase the average income of those home sales. You can increase the average income of those families that live here to send schools to our independent schools. You get less transient population. You get people that really want to put down roots in these neighborhoods and give them an opportunity to build a home in these neighborhoods that we know don't have that now. So, that said, I'd like to introduce Steve Maurer. Steve has been intimately involved with LCRAs in the past, can answer some very specific questions about how this process works. One thing that I want to make very, very clear to this process is that it's a very targeted approach. It is not coming in and wiping out an entire neighborhood. It is not displacing families. It is not asking people to move out of homes that we can then build, something that we've deemed fit, that they thought was fine before. It is absolutely not about that. It is an extremely targeted approach so that we as a